Hi, this is Dr. Nick. I'm the incrementalist, and I'm here for healthier business and healthier life.
And I'm Fred Goldstein with Accountable Health, and I'm here to help you and your employees stay safe and healthy. So let's begin this week, Nick. I understand you've been looking into gender differences. What's that all about with COVID-19?
Well, it's certainly something that we factually know is the case. We've seen it in all the data sets that women get the disease less frequently than men, even, averaging out or normalizing for exposure. And the severity seems to be reduced in some women. So there's some protective element in women. And I know the men on this call are probably going, well, that's bad news for me. And potentially you see it that way, but I see it more from a scientific standpoint. And the reasons for that offer us a pathway from understanding and treatment potential. So why is it that's the case? We know for women that it seems to be linked to estrogen. There was a mouse study, albeit a small study, that demonstrated in the mice, the female mice, that they got less of the disease when exposed to COVID-19 and so forth. But interestingly, when you remove their ovaries or block the estrogen, they flexed up. So there's clearly something going on. There's also something about the X chromosome, of which women have two. And in that extra piece of DNA, there seems to be some immune immune genes that are perhaps helping fight the disease. And we also see more autoimmune diseases in women. So there's clearly something about the immune system and the response. And then there's this issue of cleanliness. And we know for a fact, gents, that women are cleaner. They wash their hands more frequently coming out of the bathroom. That study has been replicated and even confirmed in a number of ways. So perhaps it's just about washing your hands. So if there's one lesson out of this, it's be very clean and wash your hands frequently.
Absolutely, that's great. And other things you found recently?
Yeah, so there's a lot of talk about remdesivir as this, fantastic treatment. It's going to solve the problem. It's not, or at least we're not at that point yet. It's certainly showing some hopeful signs. We've moved or pushed the trials from a placebo controlled, which tends to imply that it's certainly doing some good. It certainly shortens the length, or has shortened the length, although there are some other studies that showed no benefit. Hasn't changed the endpoint in terms of outcomes. So same outcome, just a shorter duration to get to that outcome or improving. And from a standpoint of what that means for us, well, that's good news. We've got something to at least try. But I wouldn't sort of latch onto that and say that's, it's the answer. We've still got to focus on physical distancing, isolation where appropriate, quarantining when you've been identified as having the disease. So all of those things, it's all the factors that are suppressing, which brings me to the point, we seem to be seeing these numbers coming down, Fred. What's going on in all the states? We've got different numbers, different flexing. What are they doing?
Yeah, it's been fascinating to watch the states. They're all beginning, or not all, but some of them are beginning to reopen, some aggressively with a state like Georgia. Others like Florida, reopened the beaches 2 weeks ago. The trending hashtag Florida Morons was going all over Twitter. Well, this past week, the governor of Florida, Governor DeSantis, came out here in Jacksonville, near where I am at one of my favorite parks, and said, look, you people who came at us really hard were wrong. We've now been 2 weeks post that and have not seen a spike in infections. And what he's saying is, it looks like outdoor activities where you maintain appropriate social distancing are less risky. You begin to get into confined spaces, things like we saw in South Korea with the study on the call center where 43% of the people on one floor were infected, or the Tyson food plant where 900 roughly are infected. That close proximity is the problem. So Florida, as other states are doing, is beginning to open more. Now they're doing this in an interesting manner. They're not allowing all the counties to do the same things. We have higher rates of infections down in Dade, Broward, and Palm Beach counties, Miami, Fort Lauderdale area. And so they're not going to be allowed to do all of the things that start now. But restaurants, as of today, can begin reopening with 25% occupancy levels. If they had 100 license for 100 for space, they can have 25 in the restaurant, have to be spaced apart. And he even recommended that they, if at all possible, use outside seating where available. So
that brings up an interesting point. When you think about that from a state standpoint, relevant, variation, but from a business standpoint, that's exactly the point. If you've got different businesses with different activities, different, setups, you've got to take all of that into account, right?
Absolutely. And that's what you and I are working on, building these educational programs to help people develop a plan to reopen their business. And in doing that, you've got to look at a large number of areas of risk. Obviously, first, understand the virus,
right?
And then begin to look at things like your geographic area. What part of the state are you in? Are you near a hotspot? Does one of your employees live in a community that might be at a higher risk? And so begin to manage that. And that's one of the multiple steps that we have in developing a plan that we're launching now. And you can find a link to that at the end of this interview and discussion. But Nick, it gets to the point, as you said, obviously we have to understand the virus and what it does, and what are some of the options around that virus, and understand the risks may be higher for men than women, and then begin to look at your workforce from that perspective as well. So it's fascinating.
It's interesting you think. I hadn't even thought about that, but gosh, do we now start to segregate workplaces from a risk standpoint? I'm not advocating that, but it's certainly something, we're going to have to start thinking about. And that's the important point here from my perspective, is the complexity of this demands that you understand the science, consume it, and process it on an ongoing basis. This is changing so dramatically. And I think people really need help to be able to do that. And that's why we put this course together and offering those services.
Right. And when you think about these areas of risk, you first got the government rules and regulations, which overlay everything that we do. And they say you can do this and that, but they don't actually specify in detail how to reopen your business. So you have to look at what industry you're in, where your location is, what your physical workspace is, who your employees are and how you can help them, who your customers, visitors are, and those others coming to you, and then look at other options for your business to ultimately create this plan. And those are all the areas that we're working on now to put into this module, these series of modules, so that people can come up with a plan addressing those key risk areas.
Fantastic.
Well, once again, Nick, it's been a great week talking to you and getting an update on gender issues, which is something I hadn't really thought much about. So this is Fred Goldstein with Accountable Health. Thank you so much for listening.
And I'm Dr. Nick. I'm the incrementalist. I'm here for better business and better health.